What do you expect? You're going to have third world problems in your country, and Canada has a lot of third world problems. Canada is essentially becoming slowly a third world country. Is the Bank of Canada gonna save us? No, they are not, guys. We are in the midst of an economic crisis right now, and everybody is thinking that everything depends on whether interest rates go up or come back down. You're certainly seeing the stock market play off those emotions, and you're even seeing it in the real estate market in Canada, because it's become completely financialized and in a total mania, as we've described on this channel many of times. Obviously, over the past couple of years, we've been in the real blow off top of this speculative mania. And when you're in a speculative mania, it becomes very difficult to realize that within these speculative phases, there are different emotions that are running through people's heads. Now, if you were to say before 2020, oh, you know what, if the Bank of Canada or the Fed had just lowered rates to 0 prior to the cerveza sickness, everything would have been fine, guys. There would have been no problems at all. The economy would have boomed. Everything would have been absolutely fine. And the idea of that is ridiculous when you put it like that. But that's how people act and think when it comes to these different financial bubbles. So the thing is, people need to realize that over time, obviously things work in cycles. And the same goes for interest rates. We've been in a 30-year cycle of lower interest rates, and an entire generation has lived through that cycle and has seen their asset values absolutely skyrocket. And they've taught to their kids as well, and said to their kids that, hey, you need to get into this because home prices only go up, real estate only goes up in value, these assets will only go up in value. And nobody thinks about the cost of that happening and what's really happened. And essentially what's happened is the middle class has been completely hollowed out. You now don't have a real big middle class. The middle class is absolutely tiny, and what you've seen is the middle class has shrunk down to nothing. You've seen the government that has pushed this immigration policy that has really been ridiculous when you think about it. Even right now, the amount of people they're importing, all of those people, a lot of them are going to be unemployed, and even if they're not unemployed directly, then guess what? They're putting other people out of work. They're putting Canadians out of work. So it's just a ridiculous policy that they're pushing, and it doesn't seem like any politician isn't pushing this policy. You know, Canada does it by masking it up to make it sound like it's some sort of skilled immigration system that we have, and all these skilled workers are coming to Canada, and that's definitely not the case. When you really look into the numbers, most of the immigrants that are coming to Canada are completely unskilled. They're coming through the student visa program, they're coming through the asylum program. The big corporations, the oligarchies in Canada, they absolutely love it. I mean, you've seen Lululemon. Lululemon is a great example of this, yet you see everybody wearing their yoga pants. They literally threatened the government that if they didn't allow them to have more foreign workers, then they were just going to pull out of Canada. So you might think, yeah, I'm buying Canadian and this is a Canadian company, but they are a real shit company if you really think about it. And they too rely on the temporary foreign worker programs, and those programs are really just bringing in a lot of unskilled immigration. But here's the thing, guys, even now the government can't stop the amount of people that want to leave Canada. You know, Canada is in this insane crisis right now where so many immigrants want to leave, and those even that are staying right now, a lot of them want to leave and they're just waiting for another opportunity to come along to leave. And those with a lot of skills are going to the United States. They're even being poached, and that is creating a bigger crisis, because essentially you've got all these highly skilled immigrants that are leaving and they're going to the United States, and that is causing a massive brain drain in Canada. Now obviously you don't have to be very smart to work out that long term this isn't going to be good for the economy. We've already got labor shortages, and I believe like it's a globalist mentality that is driving this immigration policy. I don't believe it's the government of Canada specifically, because you see the same thing going on across the world. You see it happening in the United States with tons and tons of migrants flooding across the US border. Yeah, it's much harder to get in there if you have a lot of skills. You have to prove them, but if you're an illegal migrant, you essentially get welcomed with open arms. I see the same thing in my country, the UK. Lots of migrants flood across the English Channel to the UK every year, and it's not a good thing. I mean, obviously, you want to bring some migrants, the asylum seekers and refugees. There are legitimate ones out there, and I feel bad for those people, and a lot of those people do need a safe place to go. But the problem is, most of the asylum seekers and refugees that come to these countries, they're the ones with money. The ones who don't have money are stuck in the country. They're stuck with the circumstances of what is going on in the country. And a lot of the rules that are based around these migrants, for example, that they're not meant to travel back to their own country, they're completely not enforced by the government. So essentially, somebody can be an asylum seeker, which means they're essentially running away from their country because they're trying to escape violence or political persecution, whatever it is, and then they'll just go back to their country like a year later or 2 years later, and that's not meant to happen, but that happens all the time. If they're going back to their own country, obviously it wasn't that bad, was it? And you've even got Ukrainian refugees in Calgary who are saying the cost of living is absolutely absurd, and they just can't get their head around how people live in Canada. I find it absolutely insane that we've got to this point, and I've seen it just rapidly decline since we first arrived here in 2016. Things have got much worse. The whole immigration process, going through that process, has been mightily frustrating. You pay handsome amounts of money to become a permanent resident, then to become a Canadian citizen, and a lot of these people are just getting it for free, and they're just literally gaming the system. They're not actually escaping violence or political persecution. They're just using what's going on in their country as an excuse for them to become economic migrants. And all the people that are living in fear of violence and political persecution, most of those people, they never get out of the country. And when you import enough of the third world, what do you expect? You're going to have third world problems in your country. And Canada has a lot of third world problems. Canada is essentially becoming slowly a third world country, whilst other third world developing countries are essentially becoming developed countries. They're becoming first world countries. And it's sad to see that decline, and a lot of Canadians have worked it out, especially those at retirement age. They've figured it out. They don't want to live in Canada anymore. A lot of them come to places like here in Mexico, and they come to live here because they can have a better standard of living down here in Mexico. They can cash out of a ridiculous housing bubble and live off that retirement. And whereas if they live in Canada, they're essentially going to be stuck there, and they're not going to be able to cash out of that home equity unless they do a ridiculous reverse mortgage or something like that. And those things are practically scams the way they work, and then you're essentially in debt for your whole entire life. And what was the point in even buying that asset in the first place if you're just gonna constantly be in debt and you're gonna be left with nothing once you pass away and leaving your children nothing? And the reality is, unfortunately, your children need more and more and more. People need more support. As a child, I never got the support people get right now. I see kids and children just getting mollycoddled, and it's really created this disastrous society, in my opinion, where you've got all these children that have been shielded by their parents from the reality of living in the real economy, of how bad it actually is, and they've never stood on their own 2 feet the whole time that they've been alive, and their parents have tried to protect them from that. But all that's done is created a load of weak people in society. We just got tons and tons of weak people. I mean, the people of Mexico, they're way stronger, they're way happier than the people in Canada. People in Canada are just depressed with the economic reality that they live in, and it gets worse every single damn year. So I'd like to offer you at the end of this year in 2023 and say, yes, 2024. It's going to be very optimistic. You know, the Bank of Canada is going to come in, they're going to cut interest rates, the housing market's going to skyrocket, all whilst rents go down and immigration goes up, and it's just going to be fantastic. It's just going to be absolutely brilliant. I mean, in what world does that sound like a great thing? In what world does that sound like it's a great thing? It just doesn't, guys. And I think you're smart enough to work that out. I want to thank you so much for watching this video and tuning in and supporting this channel. If you want to help support these videos, help support this channel, go to patreon.com/marketmania. You can get access to all the new videos early as soon as I've edited them. If you've enjoyed this video, you might like this video here. You might like this playlist here. Thank you. See you in the next one. Take care.